No matter how many fantasy football gurus and crystal balls you have, there's no guarantee that you're taking home the win this weekend. But you know what's always a chip shot field goal? Surprising your friends or loved ones with gorgeous bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. Take it from me, when it comes to making your loved ones feel truly appreciated, bouquets from 1-800-Flowers are a lock. And right now, 1-800-Flowers is giving my listeners an exclusive 36 for 36 offer. 36 autumn roses, $36. That's only $1 per rose. This beautiful arrangement of fall, red, orange, and yellow roses will leave her stunned without spending a fortune. It's the best of both worlds. Amazing roses at an unbeatable price. These gorgeous roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. 36 autumn roses, only $36. Unbelievable deal, and a small price to pay with all your fantasy league winnings. There's 1-800-Flowers.com, and then there's everybody else. You know who I trust when the game's on the line. To order 36 autumn roses for only $36, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike, and hurry, the offer ends Friday.
It's time for some straight talk. The big wireless companies charge a boatload for their superior network coverage. But guess what? Straight Talk uses the same cell towers but charges a lot less. Who knew? Well, now you do. And I do. So let's do something. It's time to switch to Straight Talk. Unlimited plans start as low as $35 a month on America's largest, most dependable networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. A month equals 30 days. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
This is the best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The best of Mike and Mike.
We are back in better than ever. Mike and Mike saying good morning. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. It's a Monday morning in October. The Astros and the Dodgers are halfway to the World Series. We've got your baseball coverage today. Terrible injury news from the NFL about the last thing in the world they needed happened. And I promise not to make too big a deal about the sham of a mockery of a joke of a disgrace of a criminal act that took place in the Jet game yesterday. Golic, how we doing?
Oh, my God. You know, when I saw
I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not going to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it?
No.
You just read an open.
Right.
I mean, you craft these opens every single day.
Right.
I mean, they're like your Picasso.
That's exactly right.
Okay?
Closest I'm ever going to get.
That's exactly right. It's your Sistine Chapel. 16th chapel, the 32nd chapel.
Any number of chapel you
There
want to
you go.
apply to it, that was the worst call I've ever seen in my entire life.
This is what you do, so we start to talk about it, and you say you don't want to talk about it.
All right. Go ahead. You talk about it.
We'll talk about it at some point.
America wants to hear you talk about it.
Well, we'll get to it. I didn't really understand the call of it being overturned. I thought Jenkins handled it incredibly well. The tight end for the Jets after the game, if nobody knows what we're talking about, it was the touchdown that was taken away from the Jets, who looked like they were going to roll the Patriots early. But then again, you know, that happens, and then they usually come back. But there were a couple of plays where I had some issues with the calls. That certainly was one of them that we'll get to. He did lose possession of the ball. I thought he regained possession, and his knee was down, and he hit the pylon. I was stunned at the overturn, especially when you call it one way. I mean, you need such visual evidence to overturn something. And while I did see the ball was free, I thought he regained possession of it. So I know we'll get into it more, and I'll let you have your say. You have to try and do it calmly, though.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
No, I'm going to make it very calm, and I think the point is really very simple. I don't think this is something that we should find the person who was responsible for this. Al Riveron, I believe, is his name. Mm-hmm. And I'm not suggesting that he should be fired or suspended. I believe he should be prosecuted criminally.
Think so?
Yes,
yeah.
I do believe that this actually rises to the level of a criminal act because it's the worst call I've ever seen in any sport, not only in any sporting event, but I think maybe in the history of human civilization.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time anyone had a worse idea than that. Yeah. Let's overturn that. So you're telling me that you can tell me with 100% certainty, in order to overturn a call, there has to be indisputable visual evidence. And it's been a long time since I was in school, but I'm pretty sure I know that the meaning of indisputable means that no one in the world could disagree, right? It's sort of like the the standard of proof in a courtroom is beyond any reasonable doubt. You were telling me that beyond any reasonable doubt, you can tell me with certainty that he lost possession of the ball, did not regain it, lost it again, and did not complete the act going all the way to the ground.
I thought long and hard when I got up at 4:15 about texting Ray and saying I was sick and couldn't make it in today.
I have other definitions of the word indisputable over here. Incontrovertible, incontestable, undeniable, irrefutable, beyond dispute, unassailable, unquestionable. Does any of those rise to this level? Go ahead.
No.
Okay. Am I kidding? Not really.
How you are here,
Yeah.
there was a bunch of tweets out, and I answered some guy. He tweets, look at the NFL, always finding a way to cheat for the Patriots.
Yeah.
I tweeted him back and I said, you do realize this is the same NFL that spent over a year going after Tom Brady for deflated football and finally sat him for 4 games. Okay?
Yeah.
And then he answered back by saying that they always get the calls. I said, you haven't answered my question. This is the same NFL that does that. He said, yeah.
Now, here's the genius of it. This is their way of getting it back. This is their way of giving it back to Kraft and Belichick and Brady. Is that, you know what, we'll wait till exactly the right moment, and then we'll get a tight end named Austin Seferian-Jenkins who's playing the game of his life.
Yes, he is.
Who will clearly score a touchdown that will give the Jets a chance and momentum in the fourth quarter, and instead we will create a rule. Again, I'm not suggesting that this is that big of a deal. I'm not calling for anybody's job. I'm calling for a criminal investigation, and I'm sure that one is to come.
Off the top.
All right, let's get rolling here. Off the top in other places. The Dodgers have taken a 2-0 lead in the NLCS, and they do it in dramatic walk-off fashion last night at home.
Justin Turner was the man, second player in Dodger history to hit a walk-off home run in the postseason. It happened exactly 29 years to the day of the other guy. You remember who that was?
That was Kirk Gibson.
How about that? 29 years to the day yesterday, Kirk Gibson's pinch hit walk-off home run in Game 1 of the '88 World Series. 29 years later, Justin Turner hits a 3-run walk-off shot for the Dodgers last night. That was fantastic. What a way to end the game. 1-1 going into the ninth. Lackey pitching, not Davis. Kind of an interesting thought process there that I know a lot of our baseball people were talking about. But Justin Turner gets the shot, and the Dodgers get the 2-zip lead over the Cubs.
Yeah, Joe Madden getting criticized in a lot of different places for that decision. And remember, Madden is a guy – his players picked him up last year because Madden made a bunch of decisions in the World Series last year that if they had wound up losing, he was going to be the GOAT. And I don't mean that cheekily, considering it was the curse of the Billy Goat, but in a more traditional sports sense. So we'll see what winds up happening with that. Meanwhile, the ALCS moves tonight to the Bronx after a couple of 2-1 Astro wins in Houston. And just, I know it feels like it's about 7 weeks ago that game was played on Saturday night. What's the last time you saw a team lose in a worse way than the Yankees lost that game?
You're not kidding.
That play was just brutal.
Unbelievable. There were some interesting plays in these games from, throwouts of stretching, doubles into triples or trying to, and some wacky plays all around going on in this. So, as you mentioned, 2-1 game, so they're down 2-zip again. They face another 2-0 deficit. Only 2 teams in postseason history have come back from 2-0 series deficits multiple times in a postseason. No team has done it before advancing to the World Series. Those 2 teams, the '85 Royals and the '81 Dodgers, are the only 2 teams that have done it in the postseason.
Look, this has been a great series. I mean,
it has.
Those 2 games are both tight and exciting and fun. And even as one who is a fan of the Yankees and rooting for them, it was nice to see them hand the ball to Justin Verlander the other night and him not give it back.
Let me tell you what.
He wasn't coming out of that game.
How about between Keuchel and Verlander?
That's the thing.
Holy smoke.
And that's where the Yankees are in trouble because you got those 2 guys coming around the bend once more, and that's not going to be easy, although they had their chances against Verlander the other day, and Severino pitched very well.
They absolutely did. Now you have Morton against Sabathia. I could see the Yankees getting one back here, but like you said, they got to come around to those 2 guys again, so going to be a tough road for the Yankees.
Off the top.
What else? Oh, the Giants. The New York Football Giants won. If he didn't stay up last night, assuming that they had no chance in Denver, think again. Depleted as they are by injury, the Giants found a way to get their first win of the season.
It was pretty amazing. The Giants had over 140 yards rushing, 148. Now, 47 came on one run, but still off 32 rushes, 31 if you take that away, 31 for 101, 32 for the 148. They had 99 rushing yards before contact, more than the Broncos allowed in their first 4 games of the season combined. Orleans Darkwa had 83 rush yards before contact, more than he had total rush yards in any game of his career. And I already told Brooksy we're going to do it a little later this week. We're going to highlight their running game. We're going to give some love to that O-line. That O-line we've been bashing all year. And listen, they deserved some of it, no doubt about it. But they did very well last night, running the ball, pulling, trapping, getting guys on the move. They did a nice job last night, and they stuck with the run, 32 rushing attempts. In the shock of a lifetime, I don't know who would have picked outside of family and friends, and I think even in a private moment, they wouldn't have picked the Giants to win last night against that defense of the Denver Broncos. But, man, that's football.
And an interesting little side note in that, and maybe not coincidentally, but you see Ben McAdoo gave up the play calling for that, saying, quote, the whole team needed me this week, whatever that. To whatever degree that was a factor here.
Right.
They changed the play calling. Again, maybe part of it is because they don't have any of their receivers to throw to anyway. But for the first time in as long as we can remember, they ran the football and they stayed with it.
They ran the football 32 times. Eli Manning passed it 19 times. And the big recipient was Ingram. They had no wide receivers, so throw it to your tight end. Had 5 for 82 and a touchdown, and gave Trey Wingo the win over me in DraftKings pretty much.
Off the top.
So he's in second.
Yeah.
I'm in third.
You're in third, but you got a player. I have a player, too, tonight as well.
I know.
I have Delaney Walker.
As do I.
Yeah, I know. So I'm locked out of this.
Even if you didn't, I would have.
Yeah.
I calculate what everybody else has spent, and I know if I need to match it. I'm going to be in the money again this week, and I could catch Trey if Walker goes crazy.
It killed me last night. I had C.J. Anderson, who got me 1.2 points. Thank you very much, Denver. Where the hell were you guys last night?
Meanwhile, I've moved on to the Chiefs.
Yeah, sure you have.
Who have moved away from the ranks of the unbeaten. So the 72 Dolphins can pop that champagne again. The last unbeaten has fallen. The Steelers, with still everything in the world swirling around there, and there's even something new added to that we'll get to in a couple of minutes. But the headline here, the last unbeaten has fallen. The Chiefs lose at home.
I actually picked the Pittsburgh defense in my DraftKings for this.
I
really thought they would step up a bit. And you saw this is what happens, when Le'Veon Bell rushes for what Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown both had over 150 yards, one rushing, one receiving, obviously. So that's what this offense can be like when those two guys are hitting. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell is hitting his stride right now after showing up late to camp right at the beginning of the season. There is a whole lot of off-the-field turmoil we've been talking about, whether Ben wants to be there or not. Now, as you mentioned, a new thing where Martavis Bennett, or Bryant, wanting a trade that we'll get into more out of there. But their main ingredients of this one really came up big, and their defense played well as well.
And then finally,
off the top,
we get to Aaron Rodgers. Let's make that off the top. Presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. Look, football remains it's a passion of the people in this country, and while there are so many people who are less into it than they were before, there are people who are angry about it because of the kneeling during the anthem, and there's all kinds of problems they have going on right now. But the game itself and the sport itself remain a wonderful spectacle. But right now, with the game and the sport and the business of it a little bit under siege, if you will, the last thing in the world they needed was to lose probably their most attractive star.
Yep.
And they probably have. In that there was no one as spectacular. Tom Brady may be the biggest star in the sport,
right.
But there's no one as spectacular to watch
giving you wow
as
plays.
Aaron Rodgers.
Wow, a couple of guys between him and Odell Beckham giving you wow plays.
Yep.
Those guys are done. Aaron Rodgers, Anthony Barr tackles him after he throws the ball yesterday in a clean hit. And Aaron Rodgers lands on his right shoulder and breaks his collarbone. So he did this once before in 2013, and it was the likes of Seneca Wallace, Scott Tolzien, and Matt Flynn taking over for the 7 games he missed, where they went 2-4-1. Let's just be honest about it. They're done. Okay, they can't survive. They've had so many injuries. Both their tackles, again, offensive tackles, are injured. He breaks his collarbone. They're in a lot of trouble. Brett Hundley is going to be the guy. He's going to the UCLA quarterback came out in 2015. They're going to give him the reins. He knows the offense. We'll see what he can do. But I mean, that's going to be tough sledding. Without we always said Well, no matter all the injuries that are going around the Packers, you're getting tweets yesterday about why do they have so many injuries and other teams don't? They do have a lot of injuries, but they have Aaron Rodgers. Now they don't have Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see how long he could be out. Is it a situation where he could come back by the end of the year if they could just stay above water enough to make it into the playoffs? Could he come back? Depends on the break, what they have to do to the collarbone. But, man, you couldn't have worse news for a team outside of Brady being out for the New England Patriots.
It's brutal. And listen, when Brady missed games last year, they won.
They did.
And they have Jimmy Garoppolo.
You're right.
Now, I'm not suggesting that he's Brady by any means.
You're right. That's a good point. And even when Brady missed that season years ago, they went 11-5 with Matt Castle. So
this team ain't going 11-5.
No, that's exactly right. So to your point, that is correct. They are. I don't see there's any shot. But then again, I didn't think the Denver Broncos would get smoked by the Giants last night. It is football. You never know what can happen. But, boy, I wouldn't be putting any money worth losing on that one.
Me neither. No, listen, I mean, we have a feature called In the Zone. It's brought to you by AutoZone. You get in the zone with AutoZone. And I'm going to put Aaron Rodgers in the zone today because that's where he's been basically from the moment they handed him the ball. And with the exception of the previous times he's had some injury problems, once it was concussions, and then, of course, as Mike mentioned, the other time it was this same injury, the collarbone injury, and it seems impossible to fathom they'll get him back out there on the field this year. The Green Bay Packers were the betting favorite in the NFC to make the Super Bowl leading into yesterday. They were 5-1, second best in the NFL and best in the NFC. And the entirety of the reason for that was Aaron Rodgers.
Without question.
They are now 25-1, and the NFC favorite is the Philadelphia Eagles as things stand right now. That's a devastating blow for the Green Bay Packers yesterday, losing their quarterback. Let's hear some of the analysis we got yesterday. First off, let's hear from the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. This is Mike McCarthy.
Stating the obvious, the loss of Aaron Rodgers to injury definitely hurts. But as a football team, we have to move forward. Aaron's a great player. He's a huge part of our success in our program, but this is the state of the National Football League. You have to deal with all your injuries.
Listen, I lived this devastation in '91, and it was the first game of the season when Randall got his knee blown out by Bryce Pop of the Green Bay Packers, when we thought that was going to be our year. I mean, there was headline after headline of starting that year with our defense and Randall quarterbacking the team that it could be our year to do something there. And he goes down in week 1. And while you know you have to go out and play games and you prepare to win those games, man, there's that dread feeling of, are you kidding me? And I'm guarantee you that's in that lot. They'll all say the right things publicly. We're behind Hundley again. They're out of 2015, out of UCLA, their 5th-round pick. He knows the offense. They'll say all the right things about him. But, man, I guarantee you when they're at home, there is dread. There's absolute dread at what the possibilities were, given the injuries, but getting guys back. We have Aaron Rodgers, and where they are right now, it's just awful.
I lived it, too, if you will, as a fan in '99, which was the Jets came into that season as the best team in the AFC. They had been in the championship game the year before, and Vinny Testaverde blew out his Achilles in the first game untouched. And that was the end of that. And I still remember Bill Parcells saying afterwards, 2 things, fellas, and you know how he talks.
Yeah.
2 things, fellas. 1, they're not canceling the rest of the schedule. And 2, no one's going to feel sorry for us.
Yeah.
But what happened was, instead of winning the Super Bowl, they didn't make it to the playoffs. And that's what's going to happen to the Green Bay Packers. Instead of winning the Super Bowl, they're not going to make it to the playoffs. Either Minnesota or Detroit is going to wind up winning that division, and the Packers are going to be home watching the playoffs, because you don't lose a player the caliber of Aaron Rodgers. He is a guy around whom everything there is built, and he's one of the most important, if not the most important players in the league. Once again, that's sort of second. That's something we can talk about in a bigger picture sense at another time, of just how much of an impact on the league and on the sport all of these high-profile, exciting, fun-to-watch players going down is. Today is much more about the impact on Green Bay themselves, an NFC contender falling by the wayside. I've got Ryan Clark here. This was Ryan Clark yesterday on the loss of Aaron Rodgers.
When you lose Aaron Rodgers, you don't just lose a great quarterback. You lose the heartbeat of a franchise. You lose one of the faces of the league, and we watch him week after week. You watched him against Dallas engineer that 2-minute drive, and it seemed almost effortless. The 2 passes to Devontae Adams in the corner, it seemed like, oh my goodness, anybody can do it, and just flick their wrist and make the ball only travel 8 yards off the ground and go at a velocity of 45 miles per hour. But you can't. Right. You can't create the plays that Aaron Rodgers creates. Those aren't things that Mike McCarthy draws up. They're going to have to change the way they approach offensive football, change the way they play defense, because Aaron Rodgers covers up so many deficiencies in your team and also in your coach. And this is a huge loss, not only for the Green Bay Packers, but this changes how the NFC plays out going forward.
Since 1992, Brett Favre's first year with the Packers, they have used the least amount of starting quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Six starting quarterbacks since 1992.
And one of them, actually, I was looking at that stat also, it's Majkowski.
Right.
If we actually just took the stat to when they gave Favre the ball, it would only be 5.
Yes, it would.
Because Majkowski started that season, Favre came in, and that was it, because we all know he started every single game until he left there.
Right, exactly right. And when I intercepted the Magic Man, that pretty much was the end of his career.
Once you've been intercepted by Mike Golic, it's time to give the ball to someone else.
If you get intercepted by me, you're going to tackle me first. And then
Which he did.
Yes, he did, because Reggie didn't block him. So 6 different starting quarterbacks since 92. Next is the Giants with 9, Patriots 10, Steelers 13. You know, I mentioned the division. They're square now with Minnesota, but Minnesota just beat them. They're both 4-2. Detroit's 3-3 after that game that featured about 300 points yesterday against New Orleans. That was amazing. Detroit's down, 45-10. They score the next 28 points. It was a wild game, but Detroit there as well. So I'm with you. I mean, it's just a matter of and I think it will be Minnesota. What gets really interesting with them is Teddy Bridgewater.
Right.
You know, now it can come off the PUP list, you know, between him and Case Keenum or where that one goes.
I don't feel like I have a real sense, as many people as I've tried to ask, of whether they think he can play or not.
I have no sense because he can't, not out on the practice field, but you know he's working, you know he's throwing, you know he's doing some things.
So you know they have some better idea of this, and I can't get any sense of what that is.
Not at all. Not at all. But now, if he can come off the PUP list, he can start being out there practicing, doing his thing. So we may start to get more of an idea of him throwing, of him, more importantly, moving on that knee. So we'll see.
The best of Mike and Mike.
1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. KG tweets, I'm a lifelong Giants fan, but you are correct. The call against the Jets was a travesty. # investigate. I'm not sure why an investigation is necessary. I have all of the proof that I need right there. I have indisputable visual evidence that a crime was committed yesterday. The Jets had a game stolen from them. Andrea tweets, Greeny, you should write a sternly worded letter to the NFL. Oh, fear not, Andrea. I have begun. That letter. I'm putting pen to paper.
There you go.
Yeah, this is not even one that this is not going to be an email. This is one that's going on the personalized stationery.
Really?
Absolutely right. I'm crafting this
handwritten letter.
Yeah, seriously.
Wow.
Yeah, dear crooks. What else have I got here? Brandon tweets, I disagree. The tuck rule was the worst call ever. Now, come on, that had no ramifications. That was what was that, a preseason game?
It was a meaningless game.
Yeah, I don't remember the circumstances of that. I don't know why the snow was falling. It was in August.
Meaningless game in sunny weather.
Let's see, Stephen Moore. See, even I have to laugh at this. Now, it's very difficult for me to make this argument. Stephen tweets, Tom Brady is the golden child. He will get every call he wants. That is so funny considering the fact that they suspended him 4 games for probably not deflating football.
Yeah, exactly right. And then another Steve tweets in, Dear New York Jets, welcome to our world, Detroit Lions fans.
That's true. See, that's the thing. I've seen that happen to them time and again in the Dez Bryant call, you know, in that playoff game against Green Bay, which I will believe for the rest of my life was a touchdown. And, you know, look, these things aren't that complicated. It's the 100 drunks in a bar test. And I was there any person watching that, even after if you had just seen the replay, be honest with me, who thought to yourself, you know, I'm not sure that's a touchdown?
Well, here's the thing. In watching it, there was, I thought, one of 2 outcomes. It was either he regained possession and it's a touchdown, or he didn't and it's an incomplete pass. Never did I see he lost control, fumbled it out of the end zone, Patriots ball. I mean, I didn't see that one coming, and I'll be honest with you. I saw it from all the angles everybody else did. You saw the ball did come loose, but not like loose out in the open loose. He had his arms around it, and then his arms weren't around it. It was loose, but it was within his rib area. Then I thought he regained possession. The knee hit, I thought, inbounds, and the shoulder hit the pylon right around the same time, which to me would still be touchdown. I didn't see anything there that would reverse it, let alone say, not only am I saying it's not, forget it even complete, it was a fumble and it's the Patriots ball.
Listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the world.
No, you're not.
I know a lot of people think I am, and I appreciate that.
Nobody thinks that.
But I'm not the smartest person in the world. But let me just ask you a question.
Yeah.
In order for there to be a fumble on a play, don't you actually have to fumble? At what point in that play did Austin Seferian-Jenkins fumble? The ball kind of moved a little bit.
He lost possession of the ball. That he did.
Well, but no one else ever had it.
No. Well,
there was no other possession.
A fumble doesn't mean somebody else has it.
No, I understand that. But my point is, a fumble to me is when the ball is loose. In this case, it was kind of jarred a little bit out of his hands, and he got it back immediately.
I wouldn't even say a fumble. I agree. I would say he lost possession for a split second, regained possession, shoulder, everything hit the pylon. To me, it was a touchdown. I know we've seen explanations, but anything that makes sense to us?
No.
On why that call was made?
Nothing's ever going to make sense to anyone. This call is a criminal
we're going to hear from the league at some point.
We've heard from the league. I heard from Tony Correnti yesterday. I've heard everything I need to say. Correnti actually said after the game to Peter King, it was actually a very easy call. That's what he said.
Are we... Maybe we're missing something. Are we missing something here?
It was a terrific call. As brought to you by Fred's Optometrists, right now helping people who can't see and others who've never seen a football game. One way or another, who has the Seferian-Jenkins sound? Do I have that or you guys have that? Let's hear from Austin Seferian-Jenkins afterwards, who was, I thought, in the moment, he was stunned.
Yeah.
But afterwards, I thought he was extraordinarily classy in the way he handled this. Here he was.
I don't think it does anything for me to come up here and blast the official, blast the rule, or anything like that. The rule is a rule, man. They called it. It is what it is. I got to do a better job of having ball security so it doesn't happen again. And it's that simple. If I catch the ball and I run through both of them, and I stand up and I don't fumble or anything like that, then that's what it is. I didn't feel like I fumbled, but it is what it is. Like, I can't control that. I got a game next week. This game's over with. They played well, made 2 more plays than us to win, and that's what it is.
Wow. I mean, that dude handled it so well. I don't know how his blood wasn't just trickling down his chin from biting his lip on that, but he handled it about as well as you could. And he's right. There ain't nothing he can do about it. He's a guy that had 8 catches for not a ton of yards, 46 yards, but he had a lot of catches in that game. Tight ends were big there. Gronk had, 6 and a couple of touchdowns. In that
he was on Gronk was so good in that. Now listen, I know it's not breaking new ground to say Gronk is a great player, but we have been commenting all season on how he didn't look right. You know, he didn't.
I agree.
Right. He looks right. Yesterday, he looked right.
He definitely looked right. No doubt about it.
The Jets have a terrific young safety in Jamal Adams, who is already a very good player and is going to be a great player.
Yeah.
And Gronk took him to school a little bit yesterday.
Gronk is when he's right or as close to right as he is. He is no. You put Travis Kelce up there because he's having that monster year, but Gronk's just bigger. And just really just an excellent player. And I agree with you yesterday there. I don't know where else to go with that call. The Jets were playing, obviously, New England well, but they've certainly done that in the past. We see one-score games all the time with these two teams, but the Jets had over 400 yards. Josh McCown had over 3. The Patriots' defense has given up 300-yard passing every single week this year, every single week. But this one, they come back and win, and that was I really want to hear something. Are we going to hear something from the NFL on that? I just can't believe the official actually said it to him. It was an easy call. Then I am completely not knowing what the rule is or not knowing what was going on, because all I can say is I saw him lose possession, regain possession, and hit the pylon. So to me, it was.
They're saying that he did not regain possession, that the ball is still loose at the point, and we're watching the video here, so at the point after he hits the pylon, that he still does not fully have possession of.
That stuns me, because he sure as hell looked like he had possession to me.
Correct. And you have to be 100% certain, indisputable, unassailable visual evidence that he didn't. That's the decision that they made. Yeah. That Tony Correnti said was an easy decision. And the people at Park Avenue, it's not the referee's decision at the end of the day. Nope. It was called a touchdown on the field. The people in Park Avenue are the ones who stole that game. Mike and Mike, we are brought to you by Upside. Now save big on travel. Get a big gift card with every trip you buy. You'll love Upside.com. That's Upside.com. Once again, I'll make it as clear. I'm trying to be calm here. Yeah, I'm not calling for a suspension. I'm not calling for a firing. I'm calling for a criminal investigation, and I will not rest until I have it.
Hey, everyone. Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
We're thrilled that you've started your week with us. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Buster will join us in a second on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. He's a part of the radio broadcast team for Game 3 of the ALCS tonight in the Bronx. The Astros a 2-0 lead on the Yankees. Dodgers have a 2-0 lead on the Cubs. After a walk-off last night, we'll talk it all over with Buster again in just a second. Let me read you a few more tweets, Mike, just from around the NFL and some of the conversations we had in our first hour. Gavin tweets, the problem with the Falcons is they're not throwing to Julio in the red zone. They just might. I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, well, again, Julio's been nicked up some. As I said, Sanu's missing time. The defense, has given up, 17 in a win. Then they gave up 23. 26, 23, 20, and they're not coming up with the sacks, pressure on the quarterback, and interceptions on defense. So, yeah, it's just not clicking right now for them.
Mike tweets, is it time for Romo to come out of the booth and pick up the Packers? I saw a lot of that
conversation
a lot of that
yesterday. Absolutely, and it doesn't seem to me Romo's coming out of the booth. He seems to be pretty happy where he is, getting rave reviews everywhere.
He's very good.
I think he does a really good job. I love his enthusiasm. Does he talk too much at times? Maybe, to let things breathe, but so what? I'd rather have him be that way, and at some point he'll back off a little bit on that, but that's part of the charm as well. I think he does a really good job, and I don't think there's any chance in the world he comes out of the booth. I think he is only a few games into his new career. I think he is very happy with his choice, very healthy with it, and just fine monetarily.
Yes, he was fine monetarily going into that. He's a guy who made $100 million. The question is, does he really still want to play?
Oh, I think he absolutely wants to play. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
But what situation then would be better than this one?
No, nothing.
I guess unless Prescott got
No. Here's my point. He wants to play, but he knows from a health standpoint it's not prudent for him to play.
I got you.
That one hit like he did where he got folded one time sliding and he's done. I mean, there's the fear of that every time he gets hit. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind he would love to put a uniform on and play again. I don't think the desire to play is gone. I think that the combination of the injuries and what he's gone through with that is what has stopped him from playing the game right now.
Well, the only place that I'll disagree with you is I believe that if Dak Prescott didn't exist, I think Romo would still be the quarterback of the Cowboys right now. I think he'd be playing. He'd have come back last year. He wanted to play last year, and I think he'd be playing.
Yeah.
I think he realized he wasn't going to be the quarterback in Dallas this year, and he didn't find another situation that appealed to him. I agree with you. I don't think he's coming out.
I don't think
he's
coming out. Right.
But it certainly was an interesting discussion. Hinky Haynes tweets, bad call didn't decide the Jet game. The fact they did nothing in the second and third quarters cost them the game. Hinky Haynes can shut up.
But he's right. I mean, there are plenty of plays you can look at in that game.
Look, they're a much better team. The Patriots are 1,000 times better than the Jets. Yeah. They're better than them in every conceivable way. The Jets are tanking a season, but someone forgot to tell the players and the coaches that management doesn't want to win this year. So these guys are out there playing their behinds off. They're playing well. Todd Bowles and the guys are coaching their behinds off. I give them all the credit in the world. They're right there in the game, and they get this ridiculous call that, once again, I believe is the worst decision that's ever been made in the history of human civilization. And so that's what made me so mad. And then Andrew tweets, Austin Safarian-Jenkins gets the Sportsman of the Decade award for his perfect handling of the situation.
He did. I can't believe how well he handled that situation. But he did, and I thought the call was wrong. But we move on, Greeny. We have to move on with these things in life.
Sure, I'll get past this. No problem. You know me. I don't hold a grudge. Yeah. Anyway, the road to the World Series goes through ESPN Radio. You can catch all the postseason action presented by AutoZone on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on the ESPN app. And that will include Game 3 of the American League Championship Series tonight in the Bronx as the Astros try to take a commanding 3-0 lead. And our buddy Buster Olney will be there, be part of the broadcast, and he joins us bright and early this morning. Hello, Buster Olney.
Greeny, kudos to you, because I know that there was a time earlier in your life when you were less mature, when you'd still be in the fetal position in your house, and you would not have shown up to work today.
It's true. I've had tough days.
Buster, I have to say you haven't seen him in the breaks. He's in the corner, in the fetal position, sucking his thumb.
It's just brutal. So let's talk about something more cheerful, like baseball, and the two teams I'm rooting for being down a combined 4-0 in their respective league championship series. Let's start with last night, and that everyone is talking about the pitching decisions made by Joe Madden at the end of that game, specifically not to bring Wade Davis in, and ultimately it's Lackey who gives up the walk-off 3-run home run. What'd you make of it?
I think that Joe Madden's in a position where he's trying to make the best of a bad situation. His bullpen so far in this postseason, 19 walks in 24 1/3 innings, 19 runs allowed, an ERA is 7.03. There have been times that where the lack of strike throwers in the Cubs bullpen, it's been so bad that the camera will pan to Joe Madden in the dugout, and he'll just be shaking his head very slightly. At one point when he had a reliever who wasn't throwing strikes, you could see him turn to his pitching coach, Chris Bosio, and say as he went out to change pitchers, I just can't wait any longer. And so no matter what combination he's pulling out of the bullpen right now, it's not going to go well. You could argue it either way, I think, with Wade Davis, because at some point, as a visiting team, you're going to need 3 outs if you get a lead. So I understand what he was thinking there. But, man, what a stark difference between the Cubs this year, the Cubs last year with the bullpen, and with most bullpens that we see in the postseason this time of year, which are typically dominant.
So for going forward, however many games that this series continues to go, do we expect kind of the haphazard's kind of the wrong word, but the Joe Madden decision on who's going to pitch after his starter is out kind of way to go?
I think what you're going to see is Joe Madden lighting candles and hoping that his starting pitcher can go as deep as the Astros starting pitchers have been going, 7th, 8th inning, and then he can turn to Wade Davis. That's the perfect case. That's the best case scenario for Joe at this point, to bypass all those middle relief guys. Look, Carl Edwards Jr. this year was one of the best relievers in baseball, and then toward the end of the season, he really began to struggle to throw strikes. And it's so bad with the Cubs bullpen now that in a key spot in the 5th inning last night, Joe had to turn to him anyway, and probably because he's thinking, you know what? If we're going to win the World Series, I need this guy to get right. He's like the kicker at this point, Carl Edwards Jr., who's missed like 8 straight field goal attempts. They just need him to get better in the midst of this postseason, and that's really difficult.
And how much of an impact on it all do you think wear and tear has? Hembo just sent me the numbers. In the series leading into these, the Cubs against the Nationals had to throw 781 pitches as a team. The Dodgers only had to throw 383 pitchers. And so now you spin it forward. The Dodgers have scored 6 runs against relievers in this series, and the Cubs are 0 for 24 against Dodger relievers. How much of that do you think has to do with carryover from the previous series?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a factor. And you know what? We always, when we go into these postseason series, we always talk about how we like it when the number 1 seed gleans an advantage over the lower seeds because they're thrown into chaos trying to survive. That's exactly what's happened in front of the Dodgers this year. The Diamondbacks looked to be a threat against the Dodgers, and they had to use the pitcher who would match up best against the Dodgers, Robbie Ray, in relief in the National League wild card game. And so the Diamondbacks were behind. There were all these ripple effects from that game, and it took them down, and that's exactly what's happened with the Cubs. They had that extended series with the Nationals, that crazy Game 5. They go into the Dodgers series. The Dodgers are nice and rested and tanned, rolling into that National League Championship Series. And on the other hand, Madden scrambling, trying to find solutions. So a big advantage for the Dodgers to have the number 1 seed and to wait for the other teams to try to figure it out.
So you put this more on the Cubs starting pitching or they're hitting? They got just 3 hits, but it's not like the Dodgers lit it up with just 5 hits. So where does the onus go here?
Well, I think the practical reality is that the Cubs need more length out of their starting pitching. You know, John Lester had to come out in the 5th inning last night, but because of the problems of the bullpen, they just simply need their starters to go deeper into the game. So given what's in front of them, and given the fact that we see in October typically that good pitching staffs will shut down good hitting, I think you got to see more out of the Cubs starting pitching.
Can we go back before we go over to the American League in that Game 1 of the blocking of the plate from Contreras? I mean, I know the new rule is out there, but man, Buster, I mean that was picture book definition of the way to block a plate. And I know it's illegal now. I thought that the throw took him there, but they're saying he was stepping early. Man, I just hate it because that was a beautiful play.
Yeah, and I thought of you when I saw it because I knew you would hate it. Look, under the current rules, when Joe Madden said that even under the current rules, he has a problem with the interpretation, that, as you mentioned, he felt like the throw took Contreras into the path of the runner, and it was interpreted as he was blocking the plate. When I watched the play, I thought he was blocking the plate. And Ron Darling, who does such a great job, he's the color man on TBS for this series. He mentioned, why would baseball want to take away such a beautiful and athletic play as the one that was made? Here's the thing I think we all have to remember is that under the old rules, Contreras may not have made a beautiful and athletic play. You may have seen the runner target him from 20 yards with a 20-yard head start and just take him out, which is what had been developing, which is what baseball moved away from with the home plate collision rules. And the one thing we haven't seen since they put those rules in place is catchers being carried off the field in the way they were before that.
It's the one thing, and I know you can't do it this way, but, Buster, I said earlier this morning, it's the one thing where you sort of feel like maybe there should be a different rule in the regular season and the playoffs. I don't want the catcher getting barreled over because of the potential of injury on a game in the middle of June. And yet somehow in these games in the chill of October, that home plate collision, which was so much a part of the game, it almost feels like that play feels out of place in the circumstance with as much riding on every single run, especially the way this series is playing out. Every single run makes as much difference as it does.
I will tell you, talking with the people who wrote this rule, they will tell you privately it's impossible to write. Because if you're going to protect the catchers, okay, if you're going to tell the base runner you can't hit the catcher, you can't barrel over the catcher, you have to grant them at least some access at some point to home plate. Otherwise, the catcher's just going to sit on home plate. And that's why they had to write it the way they did. If you guys ever want a great challenge, Greeny, you're right. That's the way you would want it. But sit down literally and try to write that rule. It's impossible. So you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to protect the catchers, or you have to have a situation where you're going to have the runners have a path to home plate.
Just so I understand, because I'm going to disagree that he was stepping before he was trying to make the catch. If the umpires felt he was stepping to make the catch, they would not have called blocking the plate? Am I getting that correct?
You are not allowed to impede the runner, his path to the plate when you don't have the ball. And I suspect that the interpretation is that he had his foot in front of home plate before he had the ball in his hands.
Well, I agree, but all right. I mean,
go ahead, make your point, because I know what you're saying.
My point is the throw is taking him that way.
Right.
Now you're making a catcher try and do something unnatural to say, okay, I have to reach over and catch this, and I can't move my feet until I catch the ball. Then I can go in front of the plate. To me, that's ridiculous. I mean, the throw was to that inside part, and he was stepping to make the catch as well. That's the part I don't get. You're asking the catcher to do such an unnatural act now to not step with where the ball is going to make the catch.
Yeah, and David Ross, who, of course, caught for a long time in the big leagues, completely agrees with you. And I know this. Whatever answer I give to what you just said, you would still want to punch me in the head.
Mike and
I'm sorry, Buster.
And Buster Olney, who is with us again. He will be in the Bronx tonight for Game 3 of the ALCS, where the Astros won a pair of 2-1 games in Houston to come back to New York. So I'll ask it to you this way. The Yankees came back to their home ballpark down 2-0 in a best-of-5 against the Indians, and, of course, came back and won. Does this feel different to you? Do these circumstances feel different to you for the Yankees' chances of turning the series around, and if so, how and why?
Yes, it does feel different because we're seeing the Astros go old school, right? In this era in which we're seeing starting pitchers leave the game in the third, fourth, and fifth inning. Houston has these two dominant guys at the front end of the rotation. Dallas Keuchel, who always dominates the Yankees. Guys, he hasn't allowed a home run to the Yankees in his career, 57 2/3 innings. He throws 7 scoreless the other day. He's their number 1 starter, and Justin Verlander, their number 2 starter, who just keeps getting better and better and better, was totally dominant with that complete game in Game 2. If the Yankees are going to come back and win this series, they have to win at least one game started by those 2 guys. That's a giant mountain to overcome. Now, these series always take on their own momentum. If they go out tonight and they win, and then they come back in Game 4, they would, also be in a good position. But those 2 guys, that's such a different situation than what we saw against the Indians, where Corey Kluber clearly had some sort of issue, probably with his back during the series, and the Indians didn't have their ace in the way that the Astros have the 2 aces.
And I don't mean this as a pun, though I guess I do. At 5'6", can Jose Altuve be playing any bigger than he is right now? It's ridiculous what this guy is doing.
Man, it's so funny. The other day, I was talking to Josh Reddick, the Astros right fielder, and he was like, "Makes me mad to watch him hit." He said, "Because he'll throw his bat out there, and there'll be this little doinker over the infield. It'll drop in, and he's like, and why are they continually throwing him first pitch strikes? I don't get it. Because you throw him a first pitch strike, you know he's going to hit it. 13 for 23 so far in this postseason, and as A.J. Hinch, the Astros manager, mentioned the other day after they won in the walk-off, you know that Jose Altuve, whatever the Astros are doing great in the postseason, he'll be right in the middle of it. He started that rally. I think right now the 2 hitters you do not want to face in the postseason are Altuve and Justin Turner, of course, hit that walk-off with the Dodgers last night. They are so locked in this era where you see hitters swing and miss a lot. Those 2 guys don't swing and miss.
Well, the good thing with Altuve is if you or Kirkshin do an interview with him, you can look him eye to eye. So that's
I knew that was coming.
Did I say that out loud?
That was not nice.
I'm sorry.
That's not true, though. I will tell you flat out, I loom over Jose Altuve, okay, at 5'7" 3/4".
Here's who you do not loom over, and that's Aaron Judge. But he has struck out a lot more times in this series and in this postseason than you have. And I'm fascinated by him because there's a part of me that feels like this is the future of baseball. There's these big, huge, strong guys who swing hard at everything, and they hit a bunch of home runs, and then they strike out a lot. But 19 strikeouts in 27 at-bats in these playoffs. What do you make of what we're seeing from Aaron Judge right now? And he got a guy who's going to finish in the top 2 or 3 in the MVP voting in the American League.
Yep.
But do you think that the Yankees will do anything with him during the offseason about what we are seeing now?
Well, one thing about Aaron Judge that you learn, one of the great things about his personality is that he's so even-keeled, and he has his process, and he trusts his process, and he works with his process. He's not someone who's going to make big overhaul, big adjustment during the course of his season, and it worked well for him in the second half. He had this long slump, but then September he went off, staying with that. I will say this, you do wonder as he gets older if he'll learn to make in-game adjustments more effectively, because what we're seeing in this postseason is opposing pitchers breaking ball low and away, swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss. Think about this, guys. In the last 5 games, Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge combined are 4 for 40 with 26 strikeouts, which is obviously a huge problem for the Yankees. And here's something else. Most of it is Aaron Judge is a young player learning how to make in-game adjustments. That's the big challenge he has right now. But the other part of it is, statistically, and I wrote about this in a piece on Sunday, man, he gets a lot of shin-high fastballs called strikes, shin-high pitches called strikes. It's an inordinate amount. Only 2 players in all of baseball had more strikes called on them in that area below the strike zone than he did. And I talked to an evaluator, said, no question, umpires really seem to struggle to adjust to the fact that he's so big. In the same way that Jose Altuve, the guy I loom over, gets a lot of high strike calls, Aaron Judge gets a lot of calls below the zone.
Could there I'll just let the humor write itself. Buster Olney, that's well done. Thank you so much. Thanks for getting up here and enjoy the game tonight. We'll be checking in soon. Thanks, you, Buster.
See you guys. Bye.
That's Robert Stanberry, only the third on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. To be clear, what I meant by that was you got a young kid who's so good and doing so much. I don't know that you want to tell him, listen, you need to alter the approach in any conceivable way, and yet we're seeing now against the really good pitching, and maybe it's just a slump at the wrong time, and we saw him go ice cold right after the All-Star break also, and then get it going a little bit again. But, at some point, no matter how many home runs you hit, you can't have this. It's just killing you.
I listen, I agree, but do you take it? Do you take the strikeouts for 52 home runs?
That's what I mean.
You take you do take the trade-off.
You have to.
Yeah, you absolutely
he hit for a good average all year long. I mean, he was the first half of the season. He was on a pace that we'd never seen before in the history of the game.
Then it was a heavy slump. 35, 37 straight games with a strikeout in it. And I get it, the low and away, and then the high heat. And he's just so many swings and misses. And I get the calls on him, but you got such a larger strike zone. If you're a pitcher, are you kidding me? That's exactly what you're going to want to do until he starts connecting with him. So do they make him change his approach, or does he just have to get better at, making contact on those pitches? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know this. They'll trade 52 home runs for that.
Oh, of course. And if you look at the way these games have played out over the course of this series, it's 2-0 and 2-0. But last night, it's one swing of the bat for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
The two games in Houston were obviously could have gone either way, a million different ways. Brett Gardner makes it. In a game that winds up being what that game winds up being, you make the third out of an inning at third base, which is something you take a kid off the field for doing in T-ball.
I don't know if you take him off the field for it.
I took a kid off the field. I'm telling you right now,
on that.
I managed T-ball. And I'm
really?
telling you make the third out of the inning
off the field for that.
I berated him.
You berated him.
No, actually, I was nice to the kid, but I berated his family.
The kid could probably beat you up.
All right, we're
berated his family.
We're Mike and Mike. I walked over to the stands, and I said, what are you teaching this kid? How the hell do you make the third out of the inning at third base? You ever seen a baseball game before? Between that and Austin Safarian-Jenkins, I've had better days.
The best of Mike and Mike.
We are Mike and Mike. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Booger McFarland is in our studio. You see him every weekend all over ABC and ESPN analyzing college football. And there was, in a weekend filled with startling results, there was no bigger surprise, no bigger win, I think, than Syracuse knocking off Clemson, the number 2 team in the country, at home on Friday night. And joining us now is the head coach of Syracuse, Dino Babers, on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Coach, good morning and congratulations.
Booger, Mike, how are you guys doing?
Doing good, Coach.
Well, we're doing great. Man. We just showed your celebration and your speech to the players in the locker room on TV afterwards, and you talked about holding on to that feeling for the rest of your life. I'd love you to share some more of those thoughts with our audience on what a win like that means to a team, to a program, and in your case, means to a coach.
Well, first of all, I just, it's the reason why we play sports. Booger and Mike's up there. When you have something like that, it's going to stay with you the rest of your lives. And what I told the young men is, you'll get older and you'll tell your sons and daughters about it, and you'll get even older and you'll tell your granddaughters and your grandsons about it. And when you're at the family reunion and you start telling the story and they go, Grandpa, not that story again. And they can all recite the story by heart because they already know what you're going to say, but they're going to all sit there and listen to the story because that's what you're supposed to do in the family. And it's a special moment, and I'm just glad that those 104 guys in that locker room can have a moment like that to share with their family.
I'd be interested your pregame, not after. We saw how much fun in the locker room after and the joy, but pregame. This is a team, a lot of the same guys that lost 54-0 to Clemson last year as Clemson went on to win the national championship last year. Here you have them coming into your place. What was your pregame talk to them?
It's interesting that you would bring that up, Mike, because there was a lot of firsts in that game. We took out all our running plays. We lost our starting quarterback after 14 plays. We were more concerned about keeping him for the rest of the season and then trying to win that game. Our offense hadn't been shut out like that since 2002. We hadn't been shut out, so it was the first time that the guys that I got together with me, we'd been shut out. Defensively, obviously, we didn't play well. And it was just one of those games where you wanted to right a wrong. You just felt like you were, not that they were national champs last year, but we just felt like we were better than 54-0. And there was a lot of wrong in that game, and we just wanted to go out there that night and make it right.
Coach, to take it on the field a minute, I'm very interested. When you realized that Kelly Bryant couldn't move, did that adjust the defensive game plan? Because it seemed like your defense really got after him when they figured out, hey, this guy can't run anymore on us.
I thought, we were watching him, and I'm like, I'm not sure they're going to run him a lot now. He did pull it once or twice, but if it was going to be close, I think he was going to hand it more than give it. And I'm glad to hear that he's okay. When he went down, that was really a spooky moment for me because, the same thing happened to our quarterback, and I love Dabo, and I don't want anything to happen. I really still believe they're a national championship team, and they're going to be in the Final Four, and I don't want anything to happen to their season, even though, we're trying to play our best to win. But when he went out, I really got concerned because now the backup quarterback's coming in, and he's 100% healthy, and we didn't have enough tape on him to really dictate what he could and could not do. So that was not from a coaching standpoint. I'm like, oh, my God, get up. Please get up, because I don't know what the backup can do. But it worked out in our favor.
And we're talking Dino Babers, head coach at Syracuse. Big win over number 2 Clemson on Friday night. Your quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, throws for 278, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Let me just flat out ask you that. Why did you win that game Friday?
I really thought we won the game because of the senior class and the leadership. And I really believe we won the game, and this coaches normally don't say stuff like this, but because of the close loss at NC State and a close loss at LSU. And I'm like, we're in these games, and it gets down to the end, and we don't win it. And I say it's a lack of faith. It's a lack of belief in guys across from you. And a lot of those other losses came down to, Coach, I was just trying to make a play. I said, you know what making a play is? Making a play is doing your job. And when the ball comes to you, you do your job. And then after you've done your job and you're giving great effort, maybe somewhere you can go help someone else and make a play. But do your job. That's the best opportunity we have to win. And I thought the kids had a great example of those guys going out there and doing that.
So the obviously the celebration, the fans, they have great fans there. It had to be fantastic. So I remember last year you guys beat a number 17 Virginia Tech 31-17. And, you're looking for – because you're there to turn around that program. You're looking for kind of program changers. So a big win there. Unfortunately, after that, you only win one. You win the next game, and then you lose your last 4. So the question now will be, you get this big win. Now, how do you keep that going? Because all you have this week is the U, who's highly ranked as well. So you got a monster win, a big celebration. Now you have to put that aside and say, okay, this has to carry over. How do you do that this year when last year you had that big win and it didn't work so well toward the end of the season? What can be different this year?
Well, hopefully we got more depth. We haven't played with our 2 starting defensive ends since the first quarter of LSU. We still don't have the depth that we need to have in this program. And when you take injuries at certain positions, there's some positions we can suffice, and there's other positions we can't recover from. And that's why we're still recruiting. I was out, 6 hours after I went to bed. I'm in New York City recruiting. I mean, we still need to build the underbelly of this football team. But to answer your question, there's 2 ways to handle it. You can bring them in and say, forget about that. Now we need to move on to the next game. But in my heart, I just feel this is too big. You got to let this wave ride out. I was born in Hawaii. You got to ride this wave. And so we're not going to bring them in. We didn't bring them in Sunday. We're not bringing them in Monday. Now, that's more than 48 hours. And when their butts get back here Tuesday, excuse my French, it's time to get back to business, and it's time to come back to the beach and put your clothes on. We got to go back to school and get to work. Go ahead.
It was a monster win, and I'm just wondering, in your celebration, did it involve any of your barbecue sauce? Mm-hmm. Is you getting slathered on anything?
Yeah, Coach, I keep hearing about this barbecue sauce, Coach. I'm wondering, can I get some of that?
Well, I tell you what, Booger. First of all, you need to get the the dinosaur barbecue sauce. You need to get that. And now, Mike, here's the deal. And you're talking to a guy that lived in Texas for like 4 or 5 years and stopped eating barbecue because I love it so much. I just knew I'd get as big as a house. I didn't eat barbecue when I was in Texas. Now here, we're up here all the time, and I have tasted it, but I have to stay away from it. And I stay away from it because I love it so much. It is awesome. The barbecue sauce is awesome. You got to get up here. You got to have some. It's a fantastic shop. I try to stay away from it because I know I can't control myself around that stuff.
Well, Coach, I tell you what, it was one of the big wins of the entire season, and congratulations. Thanks so much for the time today, and we will look forward to checking in again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, you guys have a great morning.
Dino Babers, coach of Syracuse. What a win.
It really is. Then can you build on that? As I said, they got the U coming in, that big win last year, but it kind of didn't go too well after that. It's going to be, it's not going to be leaps and bounds. It'll be baby steps for them. But, wow, what a win and what a confidence builder
There will be a lot of programs calling him this offseason because I think there are going to be a few coaching changes. You listen to him talk. And from the coaches that I've talked to in the business, he's well respected. Fan base loves him. He can recruit. He's going to be highly coveted this offseason.
If you've ever spent any time around him, and we've had him in here a couple of times, as you mentioned, he has a real infectious energy about him. And so we'll see how. Again, everyone very impressed with Dino Babers. Enjoyed the interview. And the question is, does he stay at Syracuse and try and build that, or does he get snapped up by one of the big programs out there that might have a coaching change? We'll have to wait and see. Some of the other stuff I just am seeing here, Shefty is tweeting, despite suffering a foot injury yesterday, the Jaguars still expect Leonard Fournette to play this week against the Colts. Why are you shaking your head?
Well, because you and I were talking off the air. I'm just hoping they don't run that young man into the ground. Like, if he's got an injured foot and he can't go 100%. Like we've seen when guys get out there and they can't go full speed, now you're compensating with other body parts, and that's when usually bad injuries happen. He's the franchise. I don't care what you say about Blake Bortles. Right now, Leonard Fournette is the franchise because he's shortening the game for the defense. He's keeping the defense fresh. He's basically taking the Zeke Elliott formula and making it more physical for Jacksonville. So for Jacksonville and your Tom Coughlin, if the guy's not 100% healthy or as close as he can, don't play him this week. Don't run this young man into the ground, Greeny.
Well, if he's on the field, he's going to run the ball a lot, and I have no problem with that at all. If he's healthy enough to be on the field, then you run him. He is the franchise, not Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles won't even be the quarterback of that team next year. So if he's out there, you run him. To your point, yes. If you don't want to risk that one, then keep him off the field.
Right.
But if he's on the field, you got to give him the rock. Have to.
He's a guy who was banged up in college because of the physical nature with which he runs. And I just don't like it because what bothers me about the way the system is set up is these teams, they draft these good young running backs, they run them and run them and run them and run them and carry them, and we need you. And then when it comes time for their contract, their response is, well, listen, the numbers show that players with this kind of carry, this kind of wear and tear on the tires, their numbers start falling off at this point, so we can't pay. We saw it happen with DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
And I guess that's your lot in life as a running back.
Way it goes.
But you know what? I mean, if you wind up in a system where you share the carries with somebody, you have I guess it's a question of longevity versus whatever the alternative
you get drafted,
is.
He's the man. I mean, that's.
But then you get less money, though. If you share, like, prime example with
exactly
Devontae Freeman in Atlanta. He's sharing with Tevin Coleman. They try to give him a little less money. He had to take it to get his big deal.
Yep. But he's got a lot of money. He didn't get a lot less money. He got a little less money.
He's not getting the $12 million a year that Le'Veon Bell got with the franchise tag that Le'Veon Bell wants. That's my point.
Okay, so one way or another, I'm right and you're wrong on that. Let's move on to something else here. We'll give you guys 3 minutes here that we have before Adam Silver joins us. The rest of your thoughts on the college weekend. It was supposed to be a humdrum, there's no ranked game kind of weekend, and all of a sudden the big teams start dropping like flies.
Stunning. We just talked about Clemson losing, and then later that night, Washington State. Yeah. They lose. They get smoked. And then the amount of teams that lost, I thought it was pretty amazing. I think, Booger, overall, I think the Big 12 got helped the most here of the teams, with TCU leading the way, but Oklahoma State are right in it because they get their cracks there. I think the Pac-12 could be in a little bit of trouble here.
Here's what I look at. Alabama has a hold on number one right now, and the road for them to get to the college football playoff is really simplified. I think the toughest games they have left are going to be at Auburn and whoever they play in the SEC title game. When you look at number 2, Penn State's schedule is just about to start, Greeny. You got Michigan this Saturday night, which is on ABC. You got Ohio State after that, and then you got Michigan State. So this 3-game stretch for Penn State is going to determine their season. You look at TCU, November 11th sticks out. They got to go to Norman to play Oklahoma. That game, to me, is going to be very, very critical for them. Georgia, I like where Georgia is right now because Georgia has a schedule where they go to Auburn, and then they're going to have Florida, which probably is not going to be, but it's a rivalry game, and then you have the SEC championship game. Those 3 set up right there, pretty nice. I think the ACC is in good shape with Miami and Clemson coming back with Kelly Bryant getting healthy. I think the ACC is going to be okay. I'm with you, though. The Pac-12, when you have Washington losing with that strength of with that non-conference schedule being as weak as it is, you have Washington State losing. I think the Pac-12, unless USC can get hot,
right,
and run
like they did last year,
like they did. If USC can get hot and run the table, I think they're the only hope for the Pac-12 now. But it was a wild weekend when you have 4 of the top 10 losing, and no one expected any of them to lose.
I'm still I mean, because, listen, you have Penn State and Wisconsin both undefeated. It's not going to last, right?
Right.
Something's going to have to.
They play each other.
They can't. And then TCU's undefeated.
Actually, they would only play each other in the conference title game.
But somebody's going to.
If they were both unbeaten, right. They would get there. Correct.
Somebody would lose, right? I still think, I said it before, I said it for a couple of weeks, and I'm hanging on to it. Georgia and Alabama are going to be undefeated playing one another in the SEC title game, and the question's going to be, will the loser of that team still make it in?
It depends on how the game is.
Right,
if it's a classic, a good game, one team loses by touchdown or field goal, you could see a scenario where this year, because right now, today, how can you argue that Alabama and Georgia are playing the best football? And it's not necessarily about who they're playing. It's about how they're doing it.
Right.
They are demolishing people. And so if it comes to that point, Golic, and it's a close game, the committee's going to have a very, very tough decision to make.
I think it'd be interesting if Penn State winds up being unbeaten going into that Big Ten championship game and loses a close game to Wisconsin. If they have wins, the kind of wins that they have, if they beat Ohio State, if they beat Michigan, as good as they've looked all year long, would they be a team you could consider with one loss also?
Is Wisconsin undefeated in that scenario?
If Wisconsin is unbeaten, because then the Big Ten would obviously be getting them in, and then would they get 2 teams in?
Yeah, maybe. I think when you look at Penn State's non-conference, I don't think it's tough enough maybe to warrant that. And I don't know how high the committee will value Big Ten.
Is the Big Ten right now better than the SEC?
It's right there.
And let me just say really quickly, if this certain team runs the table, let's not knock out the University of Notre Dame.
I knew
they would have one loss, and it would be against Georgia. They got a tough schedule.
Toughest stretch I've ever seen coming down.
But if they do it, they got a great argument.
Booger, thank you. Adam Silver joins us next. NBA season starts tomorrow. Stay there.
Go Irish.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Yeah, we're a little aggravated this morning.
A little bit.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance. Well, here's what I got working against me, right? I'm rooting for the Yankees. They're down 2-0. I'm rooting for the Cubs. They're down 2-0. Brett Gardner made the third out of an inning at third base, which, as I said, when I was managing T-ball, if a kid did that, I would berate his parents. And then you got a call in the Jet game yesterday that set back the sport of football 20 years. I mean, I'm launching a criminal investigation into what happened there. So the only good news I have is basketball starts tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that. And we'll have Adam Silver on in just a moment. But outside of that, I'm a little cranky on Monday morning.
I really thought about not coming in today. Really did, because
That's a
I
tough
knew how
one,
you'd
Mike.
be.
It's a tough one. That was a tough, brutal, and the thing that made me delighted was that you're on my side on the call.
I am.
Because
but I'm also on the side of there was game to be played after that. So you can't
good game. There wasn't good game to be played after that.
You can't hinge the outcome of that game on that call. There were plays after that you have control of.
Look, the Jets they're running uphill, right? I mean, they're a team that is purposely tanking. Their owner is an ambassador in another continent.
Yes, he is.
All right? Someone wake Woody up and tell him we lost a close game yesterday. And so the point of it is that you've got a lot of things working against you as it is. You cannot have, like, unprecedented calls going against that. I don't care if you think it's the right call or the wrong call. It's a call people don't see much. We know that if you fumble a ball out of the end zone, it is a touchback. I'm not saying that. But that exact play, I've been watching football all my life. I'm not sure I've ever seen that exact play officiated that way.
The more you think of it, the more you understand if the referee thought it was a fumble and it was in the end zone, then you understand why New England got the ball. But
may I correct you? It can't be that the referee thought it was a fumble.
No, I know.
He has to be saying with 100% certainty to overturn the call.
What did he tell Peter King after the game? That he said thought it was
Tony
a pretty easy
said
call.
He thought it was an easy call.
An easy call to make. I did not see it, but listen, the only one that matters seeing it, him.
At the end of the day, I was actually the call is made in New York. By other people watching it. So one way or another, that aggravated me no end.
Yeah, well.
Then you get the Cubs, who are afraid to go to their bullpen, and we talked about it this morning with Buster Olney. A lot of people criticizing Joe Madden for having John Lackey out there who gives up the game-winning walk-off. With the game-winning and walk-off are by definition the same thing.
Yes, they are.
Gives up the walk-off home run yesterday, and now they're down 2-0. But, you know, the way his bullpen has looked through the series is really kind of hard to fault him. I know he's taken a lot of heat, and I know that his managerial performance in last year's World Series was heavily questioned as well. But all things considered, it leaves the Dodgers in a commanding 2-0 position, the Astros in a commanding 2-0 position. I'm just not in a good mood. I really don't have any other way to put it.
I wish I had something that could brighten your day, but I don't. NBA starts tomorrow.
Right. That's what I'm looking forward to. So again, Adam Silver.
We do have that going for us.
And we can also brighten your day this way. Because you said it, and I just went and looked it up. Because I'll admit, I'm not sitting around looking at Notre Dame's schedule all the time, and I know that you are. Notre Dame 100%, and I get it. It is a tough road to hoe.
Oh.
But if they win out, like if you were to name the teams that could win out and be guaranteed to be in the college football playoff, I mean, stone cold lead pipe lock. I'm not sure how many teams would fall in that category. Alabama, Georgia, Penn State, just a handful. They are one of them. If Notre Dame wins out, they will definitely make it into the final.
Well, a lot of it depends on how many undefeated you have. We've never had, what?
But there aren't. I don't think there can be that many anymore.
Right. Georgia and Penn State.
It's already over.
I mean, Georgia and Alabama, there would have to, it could only be one out of that.
Wisconsin,
Penn State, Wisconsin,
and Penn State.
And TCU could be undefeated as well.
So let's even throw that
in the
into
Big 12.
The mix.
So, but Notre Dame, their only loss is to Georgia, which is now ranked, number 3. Their next 2 home games.
By 1 point.
Yeah, 20-19. 2 home games coming up, number 11 USC, number 16 North Carolina State. Then they're home to Wake Forest, and they're at the U, which is ranked number 8. They're home to Navy, and then they're at Stanford, who has the guy in Bryce Love who's maybe leading the way for the Heisman Trophy right now. It is a tough schedule. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to run the tail on this. I really, really do. The best part of their team is their rushing attack. The O-line, it's a veteran O-line. They're playing very well. Josh Adams is a guy who should not be overlooked as one of the best running backs in the country. He's a big kid. He's a good-looking running back. Wimbush has been injured, didn't play in the last game for them. So we'll see. It's a tough road. I don't know if they can pull off winning all those games. But if they do, they would have just as good an argument as anybody else to say we belong in the Final Four.
I'll take a step further. If they win out, they're in.
I would be stunned if they wouldn't be. I agree.
All right. All of that said, I mentioned I'm in a bad mood on a variety of fronts this morning. The only thing that brings me some cheer is that basketball is back and better than ever. The NBA regular season tips off tomorrow night, and joining us now to preview all of it is the commissioner of the NBA, our friend Adam Silver, is back with us on Mike and Mike. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. That's a tall task if I'm supposed to cheer you up, but good morning.
Did you see the call in that game yesterday? You're there in New York. Please, did you see the call in that Jet game?
I did see the call in that Jet game. It's interesting. In the NBA, our standard is clear and conclusive to overturn a call. So as a fan, I didn't quite understand it.
Thank you. I've got the commissioner of other sports on my side on this thing.
Unfortunately, he doesn't say this.
All I said is I didn't understand it. I'm sure there's a very logical explanation from the league office.
Well said. All right, I got you in trouble before we even started. So then let's get to the really good news to begin with. Last season, it was a great year in many ways for the NBA, but one of the major problems that many people complained about, myself included, was the resting of a lot of superstars. So you have made some adjustments this year, and I know you've had a lot of conversations with your teams about that. What is your expectation relative to how different it might look this coming regular season with stars playing in the highest profile games and other games beyond those as well?
Let me just begin by saying it wasn't quite the epidemic of resting that some people made it out to be last year. I mean, for example, Steph Curry rested once, Russell Westbrook rested once, Harden never rested, and LeBron at 32 years old, rested for 5 games. But this is unbelievable. He already has more minutes in his career than Michael Jordan did when he retired at 40. Mm-hmm. But having said all that, we don't want to see healthy players resting, especially for marquee games, and especially when they're only in a city once when they're on the road. So what we did was we created a new set of rules where, number one, players for the most part, should not be resting when they're healthy. We recognize it's going to occur sometimes, so when it does occur, teams shouldn't be resting multiple starters at once. They shouldn't be resting during marquee national broadcast, and that's essentially what happened last year. We had 2 Saturday night games on ABC where we had multiple starters resting. And I think, and on top of that, we had some fairly dramatic changes in how we go about the schedule. We added a full week to the regular schedule. We did a better job locking dates and buildings out so that when we just have more choice, so that we have priority over concerts and other events and buildings. So at the end of the day, we were able to completely eliminate 4 games out of 5 nights and dramatically reduce back-to-back. So it's my expectation that the problem will largely have taken care of itself.
Well, let me just say, I completely agree with you that it was overblown, and I kept saying that. It's the guy to the right of me that kept losing his mind on it. So I am in complete agreement with you on that. That being said, with the new set of rules out there and you with the ability to find teams, if you don't like kind of what's going going on. Are you in a position where you would have to drop the hammer quickly and early on that to kind of set a precedent if you don't like what you see?
Honestly, I hope not. I now have that tool available to me, and that is to fine $100,000 or potentially more if a team violates our policy. But I've met with the coaches. I met with the general managers. We had an owners meeting 2 weeks ago. I think everyone understands that we have to balance issues in this league, that at the end of the day we wouldn't be where we are without our fans. Our broadcasters are critically important. And at the same time, we don't want players to get injured. And, the good news also that we hardly talk about is virtually all of our top players were healthy in the playoffs last year. Obviously, we had that injury to Kawhi, but I don't think that was an overuse injury. And so, again, you see it in all sports. It's nothing new that players get rested, but it's a long season. And it's causing us also to take a fresh look at the length of the season as well. The interesting thing is, and it often surprises people, we don't have more injuries as the season goes on. It's not as if there are more injuries in March and April than there are in November and December. Where the correlation comes is when players are fatigued. That's why we've made a lot of changes in the schedule for this year.
Yes, and we love it. I mean, we absolutely love the changes that were made. So that was one issue, and that would be the resting. The other one was the tanking, which I know that you have begun the process of addressing with some of the changes that you made in the draft lottery. And some people may say, oh, it's not enough. My perspective on it was it is at least a step in the right direction. What is your expectation relative to that? What was the intention going in, and where do you think potentially you could see it going?
I mean, there were two issues, and one is whether there was too great an incentive to be at the very bottom of the league. So under the current draft rules, which, by the way, remain in place for this season, it doesn't change till next year, the team with the worst record had a 25% chance of getting the first pick, and then the team with the second worst record had a 20%, and the third worst record had a 15% chance. So what we've done is we've now, beginning next season, changed the odds so that the team with the worst record has a 14% pick, the team with the second worst record has a 14% pick, the team with the 14% chance, the team with the third worst record has a 14% chance. So hopefully it'll accomplish two things. One is it doesn't create the same incentive to race to the bottom by moving over 10 percentage points in terms of likelihood of getting that pick. But in addition, I think even more concerning to me was the jockeying near the end of the season to move from third worst to second worst to the absolute worst, because it was statistically significant to move from one slot to another. So it's, as you guys said, it's far from perfect. At the end of the day, the purpose of the draft, of course, is to help the worst teams restock with the best players. So, and we've experimented a lot with this over the years, and certainly we're not ready to give up on the draft, so we'll see how our teams respond to this change.
Certainly, you like to see how anything works out. My issue with the commissioner was that a team that had the fifth worst record may not tank because they couldn't get all the way to the bottom of the worst to get the best shot for number one. My thought was now if the top three get at least an even shot for number one, you may get the fifth worst team or the sixth worst team to tank it just to be the third worst team and get even with the other teams to get that top lottery pick. So that was my only concern about that. What was the thought process about the possibility of that happening?
We looked at it. We think there's not a statistically significant enough difference between being in the middle of the pack and then moving to the very worst part of the draft to incentivize teams to do that. But I'll say one thing in this business. I mean, this is the fifth time we've changed the draft lottery, and there are always unintended consequences, and the teams are super sophisticated. They are deep into analytics. They figure out things that we didn't necessarily anticipate. So it's one of the reasons everything in this league seems to be an experiment of one sort or another. I think you got to make changes, but we have other ideas in the drawer that we continue to look at, so we'll see how our teams respond to this.
Mike and Mike, Adam Silver is with us again. NBA season tips off tomorrow night with a couple of really interesting matchups, including the Celtics and Cavaliers, Rockets and Warriors, so it should be another great year for the NBA. One of your owners now and the greatest legend maybe in the history of your sport is Michael Jordan, and he voiced some concern that others have about quote-unquote super teams in your sport, saying it's going to hurt the overall aspect of the league from a competitive standpoint. People still look at Golden State as such an incredibly prohibitive favorite. Where do we stand as far as you're concerned on super teams and that concept?
Well, I'll just begin with Michael's comments, and I chuckled a little bit because this notion that maybe the most competitive athlete in the history of all sports is frustrated, maybe a little bit, that his team isn't predicted to win the championship this year. So I take it with a bit of a grain of salt. And also, here's a guy who, in his last 6 full seasons as a Chicago Bull, won the championship. So at the time, of course, everyone defined that Bulls team as a super team. But so I think there's a recognition that in this sport, that with combinations of certain players, they're going to be superior. And to me, as I said towards the end of last season, we should celebrate excellence. I mean, before we talk about breaking up a truly great team, especially one that was formed largely through the draft, I get it, Durant came as a free agent, but when you have Steph as the 7th pick, Clay as the 11th, Draymond as the 35th pick, Steve Kerr doing an incredible job, Bob Myers as the GM. To me, it raises the bar for all teams in the league, and it's something that rather than teams sitting around and saying, well, we can't possibly compete against the Golden State Warriors, you'd like to think that the collection of the very best players in the world on the 29 other teams would just have that team in their sights. But having said all that, Michael also happens to be chairman of our Labor Relations Committee. And, it's just like changes in the draft lottery. We're always looking at the system and trying to find ways to create the best possible competition. And talk about unanticipated impact of rule changes. Several years ago, within a soft cap system, the salary cap system we have, we added a hard cap for individual players. Mm-hmm. So my sense is once we added the hard cap for an individual player and they couldn't essentially make more by moving teams or staying with their team, they can around the edges, but for the most part they can't. As you might expect, winning becomes paramount. If I know I'm going to make, even though it's a fortune of money, that's I'm capped in terms of how much I'm going to make. Of course their desire is to win. And so I think an economist would have predicted that would mean that those great players would tend to congregate together because they truly do want to win championships. And whether over time we need to make adjustments in our system, we'll look. But having said that, Michael's other line was there, in essence, only 2 great teams. I'm still trying to figure out who that second team is. Was he referring to Houston, OKC, Cleveland maybe? Boston? What do you guys think?
San Antonio. I think he was referring to OKC. I think he was referring to OKC only because they added Paul George and Carmelo kind of late in the going, but Houston added Chris Paul. No, look, what you have is you have a bunch of GMs who are doing exactly what you're saying rather than sitting back and doing nothing. I read Daryl Morey, an interview that he did where he said, look, our job, whether we can catch Golden State or not, our job is to try and to get as good as we possibly can. So that's what most of those teams are doing.
Right.
Mike and Mike Adams Silver.
I just say,
go ahead.
It's funny, you guys are saying Houston or OKC. It's amazing. So he's leaving out Cleveland. I mean, we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing the games.
Maybe it will be Cleveland. Mike and Mike, 2 quick things I wanted to get in because I've seen interesting comments made about them recently. One of them, you yourself said, and you kind of alluded to it at the very beginning of this conversation, that you and the league are not married to an 82-game schedule. Can you expand on that thought a little bit?
Well, what I said was it's been in place for 50 years, but there's nothing magical about it. There was no special formula, at least looking back in terms of our records as to why we play an 82-game season. And I only say we're learning more about players' bodies. We're learning more about the impact of fatigue. We just added a full week to the regular season without adding more games to create more space between games. And at the same time, putting aside player health, we have to continue to look as an entertainment property what the competitive landscape looks like. And we know that it's a very long regular season. It's interesting, 10 years ago, people were predicting in the industry that fans would no longer want to buy 41-game, season ticket packages. It's fascinating. I don't know if it's because StubHub's done a good job. The secondary market is so robust. Actually, season ticket sales are at an all-time high, I think, because people have an easier time moving those tickets or they can email them to friends and other things. I'd say in terms of the length of the season, it may be – I'm always looking at international soccer to see how they do things differently. They have mid-season tournaments, for example. I mean, one concept we've discussed is maybe shortening the regular season, but around All-Star – maybe not even having an all-star game, instead having a tournament at that time of year, a tournament that that teams care about, where it's something else to win. I mean, another thing that a lot of the great GMs in this league always point out to me, and especially those ones who study international soccer, they have multiple cups that you can win, and they're all significant. In the NBA, you play an entire season for the Larry O'Brien Trophy, but it may be that some sort of midseason tournament could also become important, and the fans could get behind it. And those changes don't take place, quickly. I think it's something that we continue to look at, but that's really what I meant. I just think there's no magic behind 82 games, and we're in the league office and working with our GMs and our competition committee. We're continuing to look at other ways to present the competition.
Really interesting. Mike and Mike, Adam Silver is with us. One other thing that I thought of here is that there's been all of this turmoil in college basketball right now, and we have heard from a lot of high-profile college coaches who have sung your praises, by the way. Coach K in particular said that no one has tried to help the circumstance from the NBA historically more than you have tried to do from your role as commissioner. But it will bring up again what we know as the one-and-done rule in college basketball, and many people have speculated that maybe we could see the end of that coming up soon. What are your thoughts on what would for you be an age restriction, and whether you could see any change in that in the foreseeable future?
Well, one, I think as you guys know, we can't change the minimum age in this league without negotiating with the union. So it's a function of collective bargaining. But what's really interesting to me is that the last two number one picks in the NBA draft, Ben Simmons 2 years ago and Markelle Fultz last year, both played for teams that did not make the NCAA tournament. And I think not enough people are talking about that. That seems to be a sea change in sort of in the development of players coming into the NBA. And I think it's become common knowledge now that these so-called one-and-done players are, and maybe understandably, almost entirely focused on where they're going to go in the draft lottery. Not to say they don't badly care about winning, but the stakes are so high in terms of their place in the draft lottery. The stakes are so high in terms of the amount of money they can make over a long NBA career as a star player that, that's sort of front and center what they're focused on as college players. I think. And we had a huge increase in the number of one-and-done players that came out last year. Over the years, we've had roughly about an average of 8. Last year, we had 16 players came out as one-and-done players. So I think something has to change. As I've said before, it's clearly not working for the college game. The top college coaches have said that several times. I think from our standpoint, if the players in that 1 year of college aren't getting the kind of development we'd like to see them get coming into the NBA, aren't playing in the NCAA tournament, aren't competing against top-notch competition, I think we have to take a step back and figure out whether we're better off taking those players at a younger age and working on their training and development full time. I will say, our development league that now has become our G League this year, we're up to 26 teams that have corresponding NBA parent teams. We have two-way contracts for the first time this year, which means that you're going to have, in addition to the NBA roster, two players on G League rosters who can come up a certain amount of days to the NBA team, who can make roughly $250,000 a year playing in the G League. Of course, the issue for the top college kids is whether they should be paid. I think it may be the case that at this point, given the amount of money that is generated by their performances, that we as the NBA have to take a serious look at paying them and even paying them much better than players currently receive in the G League. So those are all things we're looking at. It's clear a change will come. It's something Michelle Roberts is the head of our union. I've already started talking to her about it. I mean, these changes don't have to wait till you finish a collective bargaining cycle. Even though we're in a new collective bargaining agreement, we've told them, Chris Paul's the president of their union, Michael Jordan's the head of our committee, that we should sit down even this season and start talking about what a different framework would look like.
Lastly, Steph Curry said he wasn't going to go to the White House. We saw the president's response on inviting the entire team. We've seen the president's response to the NFL and the players that are protesting during the national anthem. The owners and the union are actually going to meet in the NFL, which I think is a good thing coming up starting tomorrow. You seem to have a great relationship with Michelle Roberts and the union. What are those conversations been about players and social activism? I know you have a rule of no kneeling during the anthem. Where is your line of where you will get on the players for things that they are doing and what they are able to do? What has those discussions been?
Well, let me just begin by saying we've had a rule requiring players to stand for the anthem that it's been in place as far back as I can find it in our rules. I mean, going back beyond certainly 3 decades. And as you know, none of our players chose to take a knee during the season last year. I think there are a lot of differences between NBA players and NFL players. Number one, our season is much longer, and we play a lot more games. And so with an average of about 3.5 games a week, our players have this megaphone out to the public through the media that NFL players may not otherwise have. They do media before and after every game, so that's approximately 3 times a week. They have huge social media. They have a huge social media presence, and also because they don't perform in helmets and they're two-way players, they're better, more recognizable to the public. And so they have a forum that maybe NFL players don't have. I'd say the discussions we've been having with our union have focused more on action as opposed to protest. Not to say that there isn't, of course, an important role for protest in society, but we've said the issues are very well known at this point, and certainly the NFL players have attracted a lot of attention to the issue of social injustice. So we said, what is it we can be doing about these issues? And, for example, last year we worked with our union to create programs in all 30 team communities where police officers and young people, especially young people of color, were coming together with NBA players in private forums, no media present, just to listen to each other. I mean, to me, one of the core issues here, now going to the real substantive problem in society, is that there isn't sufficient trust in these communities between law enforcement and these young people. And so those are the things that we're very focused on with our teams right now.
It's well done. Listen, Commissioner, we wish you the very best as you get a new season started. We always so appreciate your time and your candor, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Have a great opening night, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.